We had Ronnie Grob on the show today, fellow rabbit hole dwellers, and we spoke about Switzerland, about libertarianism, about his publication, which is called, help me out here, Joel,
Swiss month, if you translate it to English.
Swiss Month. Mate, great guy. We've delved into the whole kind of sort of narratives of Bitcoin. We spoke about the differences of living in the city versus out in the countryside. We spoke a little bit about investing in other things like altcoins and that natural journey into Bitcoin space for most people and all that kind of stuff before you realize the value of Bitcoin. Joel, what else did we chat about?
I think we also gave a good perspective on why just a certain group of society doesn't really want to understand Bitcoin. I like that Ronnie said they just want to stay poor, so that's why they don't buy Bitcoin. So it's literally have fun, stay poor. I like that
Yeah,
moment.
literally, yeah.
And an interesting angle. I've never really thought about this, but we don't want to spoil anything. As always, guys, thanks for your time and stay curious. Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Rabbit Hole Stories. This week we have yet another journalist from Switzerland on, and that is Ronnie Grob. Ronnie, how has your day been so far?
It's sunny in Switzerland now. It used to rain a lot, but now I'm pretty happy.
Yeah. Is it also sunny over your end in England, Ian?
You know what England's like. It can't make its mind up from one day to the next. This morning we had sun, but now it's raining, so who knows?
Okay. It could have been sunny. It was a lucky guess.
Yeah.
Nice. And Ronnie, with like every guest we have on, we'll start with their rabbit hole story. And I'm curious with yours, because I think we then have a few jump off points into various topics. How did you find Bitcoin, and basically why did you stick around?
So the first thing I read about Bitcoin was, I think in 2015 or 16, that it was dead now, and I thought, really bad. That it's such a great idea. Why didn't it work? And there's some journalists writing it's dead, and I actually believed it. I didn't think about it, and said, yeah, the journalist he cared about it, and now it's dead. Yeah, unfortunately, another idea dead. But then I came back again, and in 2016, I made a story for Schweizer Monat. I'm the editor-in-chief of this magazine, and it was about investing in times of zero interest rates or low interest rates. And there were all kind of crazy ideas materials which are seldom, like earth, how's it called, earth metals, or silicium, and there are people who put like a big, like 1 ton of these things in their garage, and they think that it might keep their value. and yeah, like other things like cryptocurrencies, and during this, in this experiment, I bought for 500 euro, I bought Ethereum. And I thought I'm going to be the smart guy. I'm not going to buy this old shit called Bitcoin. I'm going to buy the new thing. And yeah, I was rewarded because first it was like one Ether, then it was like 11 US dollar, and then went down to 8. But then it went up to 35, and I thought, oh yeah, I'm a great investor. I sell it all. But without me, it went to 300. So I'm not such a good investor anyway. But yeah, after a while, I found also Bitcoin interesting, and I started reading more and getting into it, and buying more, and that's how I got more into it. And at first, I was cautious and I didn't invest much, and then I also bought some stellar lumens, for example. And then there was this high point of 2017 where everything went up, and I think stellar lumens, I bought it for like 1 cent, and it went up to 80, and I thought, like, wow, you really can do money with that. But of course I didn't sell it all then, and I waited until it went down again. So yeah, this is how I got in.
You were saying about Bitcoin, hearing that Bitcoin was dead back in 2016. It makes me think, how many times has Bitcoin supposedly been dead now? Isn't there like a website that's dedicated to this or something about how many times Bitcoin has died? But so obviously you realized over the course of time that actually there was a cycle, right, to it all. There was like this sort of these ups and downs. And when was this sort of like curiosity for you enough to be like, actually, do you know what? Bitcoin isn't actually dead. It's something interesting. And did you then sort of continue with the whole Ethereum and other stuff, or did you just sort of like diverge straight into Bitcoin only, or what's your current status quo within the ecosystem?
Yeah, I just I invested more and more, and I had all these different coins, and I thought like I have to buy a bit of everything,
Mm.
diversify, and I think I had like over 30 currencies in my portfolio, and I went to meetups, and they said, yeah, you have to buy this coin and that coin, and this one is also a good one, and you know, you have no clue, and you just try out. I'm a curious person, so I just invested a bit in everything, like money I can afford to lose. And But in the end, I got more and more into it, and found out that Bitcoin is the real thing, like the one thing which is really censorship proof, and really the diversified, the decentralized, and I found out it has also a connection with my values, with my libertarian values, with my values of decentralization. And I think 1 or 2 years ago, I wrote a text which was called like Bitcoin suits to Switzerland, because like there's a lot of things in common between Bitcoin and Switzerland. There's free speech, there is decentralization, like federalism called, like that the low level can decide a lot, and there is no centralization of the political things. Also, there is direct democracy, which is also
Yep.
kind of a thing in Bitcoin, and a lot of other stuff. I mean, it's a really it's empowering the people. So, and these days I see Bitcoin as a freedom technology which empowers the individual everywhere. And this is also like one of the difficult things, because Bitcoin really is for everyone. It can also
Hmm.
be for the thugs, and for the bad people, and for the governments, and for the dictators, and for the drug dealers. And I think people have to see that really everyone can buy that, and no one can be stopped buying that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this is one of the misconceptions. I don't know about you, Ronnie, but if I tell people so I'm half Swiss, half Austrian, and if I say Switzerland, they go like, oh yeah, democracy fixed everything. And I go, yes, I know what you mean, but there are also downsides to it. And if you live in Switzerland, you know about stuff like the Ronnie Grob. We talked about it before we hit record, you know, how the countryside and the cities are basically two totally different worlds. And there is still fighting in it, but because everyone has the opportunity to speak up and to basically say what they're thinking, there is also a lot of leverage in that. So you can build your own stuff. And you can go a step further than this. But speaking of Bitcoin in Switzerland, I obviously have to ask, because I remember a year ago you were on a German podcast saying that you actually did buy shares of the Swiss National Bank, which for any listeners are crazy expensive, but they have their perks. You get literally driven in by train with a very nice first class ticket, and you get to actually take part in the discussion in the National Bank, and you also get to bring up proposals. And one of them is that they put Bitcoin on the balance sheet. As a libertarian, when that came up, and as a Bitcoiner, was there like an inner fight, a dialogue in you where you went, I don't want to force something on anybody, but like the sheer value we get out if we put Bitcoin on the balance sheet is so much that you actually help the citizens of Switzerland. What was that journey for you? Why did you also decide to buy shares into the National Bank? And can you maybe give a little bit of an inside scoop how these meetings evolve and what it's actually like speaking to national bankers?
Yeah, I'm still not quite sure if it's a good idea to ever give the central bank the idea to buy Bitcoin or the government to buy Bitcoin. But there is also a counter argument. I mean, do we want that the Swiss National Bank buys it, or that the Qataris buy it, or whatever, the Chinese or the Saudis or whatever? It might be better if like countries like Switzerland buy some. But yeah, it's an inner conflict, and yeah, the General Assembly of Swiss National Bank is quite interesting. It's a yearly thing, Generalversammlung is it called, and everyone who buys one share can be a guy who is invited, and you really get invited by postal service, and you get a train ticket first class from wherever you live in Switzerland. It might be Geneva or St. Gallen, and then you can drive first class to Bern and back for free. And there you get the whole program in the morning at 10 until 1 o'clock, and you get the food afterwards and drinks and so on. It's all paid by the Swiss National Bank, which has obviously money to share to everyone, which is kind of nice. And I've been there one time personally. And yeah, it was kind of interesting. It's like a Swiss institution, and of course there is democracy. The shareholders can bring in stuff, and they told me last year it was very much climate centered. Like all these climate people brought in, and Swiss National Bank should be sustainable and whatever. And but there is one guy, Lucius Meiser from Bitcoin Swiss, and he asks SNB every year to buy Bitcoin, and he then shows them how much they lost last year because they didn't buy Bitcoin, and they preferred like German bonds, and yeah, that's kind of interesting. So I think it's a good idea to bring that up every year, so people get used to it and say, oh yeah, there is this idea. This guy told us every year, and now it's again 5 times as much as last time. It might be a good investment, and actually it is. I mean, if you look how a Swiss National Bank, which kind of assets it is invested in, I mean, they are like one of the biggest shareholders of Apple or of Meta and other things. I mean, they have so much money on their balance sheet, they have to bring it somewhere. So and me personally as a guy who has always also gets his salary paid in Swiss francs, I'm in favor of a strong Swiss franc, which is not a shitcoin. I mean, I can buy Bitcoin, of course, but I mean, for the country, it's good to have a strong currency. But we also have an export industry, and for them, the strong Swiss franc is a huge problem, because who's going to buy super expensive Swiss products if they are not like way better than everything else?
Yeah, most definitely. And I actually have a funny comment before I leave the next question to Ian. I am constantly in contact with Swiss journals, obviously, from the bigger newspapers. And I remember before this year's assembly, you know, they were always a bit like, oh, you know, it pumped to like 74K and it dropped again. They obviously always write me like the day before we hit all-time highs. And like, please answer these questions in 10 seconds before we can publish. And then with the General Assembly meeting, they went like, is this you? Like, did you do this, forcing people to put Bitcoin on a balance sheet? I'm like, no, please read the material they actually provide you. That you would figure out that it's a group, it's a collective, you know, there's an idea behind it, and you have all of the numbers and such. But yeah, there's definitely something, if we at least have central banks who consider this. And I personally very strongly believe the first central bank who puts Bitcoin on the balance sheet is probably going to be the one that stays around the longest. We might as well use Switzerland and not, like you said, any dictatorships. But I don't know. This is maybe a bit biased here. What do you think, Ian?
Do you know what? I was just thinking all throughout this whole conversation was you mentioned something, Ronnie, about people having comments about who buys Bitcoin, whether it's a bank or institutions, or whether they should be sort of educated on this fact or not. People are so quick to judge and make comments about the direction and who should and who shouldn't buy Bitcoin, and how dare you investigate in the whole wider ecosystem. And we don't need politicians talking about Bitcoin, and we get a vast amount of different opinions, which I think is great because it's testament to the fact that Bitcoin empowers us to it empowers free speech. It empowers us to give our voice and our opinion. But I think some people get locked into this one case only scenario when it comes to their vision of Bitcoin in the future. And when it comes particularly to banks buying Bitcoin, people would get very upset about it. And I just wondered how you have compartmentalized or rationalized that yourself, Ronnie.
Yeah, I said before, I think everyone can buy Bitcoin. It's just a fact. It's going to happen, and
Yeah,
there's no way to stop that. Of course, you can be purist and say it should be the individuals, and I think it's also better if the individuals do it, and especially the poor people, they should buy now. I mean, these are the people who will benefit most in their personal life, because if you're already rich, you have people who will make the bad things of fiat system disappear, and they know how to buy and when to buy put options and when to buy stocks and when to sell stocks, and they know it all. I mean, they know it, and their fortune grows and grows. So I think the poor people should buy it, the people in Africa or in Afghanistan, and this is the time for them to do something. And I think it might be turn out best for them.
absolutely. And I'm just wondering because you're obviously talking about you yourself being a libertarian as well, and that very much leans into the sort of ethos of libertarianism, right? Is that you should be free to choose your best path in life, in a way, if I can sum it up in a way. And people have this. I'm just wondering whether people get locked into expending so much energy arguing about the appropriateness of where they should or shouldn't buy Bitcoin, that they're just sort of taking away the time they could in actually building something valuable in some way.
Yes, I mean, Bitcoin opens really a lot of ideas. I mean, we are also writing a lot about free private cities or private cities, like or new places to go to, like El Salvador or Bitcoin Beach or whatever, or to live like totally government free or state free. I think these are a lot of interesting ideas. I remember reading the book The Sovereign Individual. I don't know if you have
Hmm.
read it, and it was from 1996, I think, or very early, and it kind of predicted Bitcoin, and it says it's going to be the end of nation states, and this is what really fascinates me about Bitcoin, because if we really think it through, and if we think, okay, it's going to be hyper Bitcoinization, it's going to be the end of nation states, and this is like a huge thing. And actually, I'm not even sure if it's a good thing. I mean, it will turn out, but I mean, nation states, as much as we can criticize them, and there is a lot of need to do that, but they at least gave some structure the last 100 years. But of course, we can also say this about the Catholic Church before the 16th century. I mean, things change, and I think the development might go to the better, and I really hope that. But I think we're going to see a lot of interesting new ways how people live, how they live together. I mean, just imagine now Bitcoin goes to 800,000. I mean, a lot of people will sell their Bitcoin, or at least some, and leave their job and do something completely else. It's going to happen. I think it happens every bull market, and
Mhm.
so yeah, this changes the whole thing. I mean, also the view on the nation states, and I think I'm fairly positive. I think the next few years, let's say until 2030, are gonna be way interesting. I mean, it's gonna be a lot of changes, a lot of things. A lot of people will lose stuff, others will win, and it's going to be very volatile in all directions. And I mean, the stability we have until now, we have a kind of stability is going to go away. And I mean, for example, let's just one last thing. Let's talk about the crash of 2008, 2009, the last financial crisis. I was pretty sure it's the end, it's over. But the fiat system proved to be very resilient, and it's still here. I mean, it might be another 20 years or 50 years. I recently talked to a professor. He said, I'm not going to see the end of fiat system. So but let's see how it turns out. Maybe we have Bitcoin. Bitcoin's going to grow, but it's not going to change that fast. If you look back at the Reformation in the 16th century, it took 50 years. And it took wars. There were wars, and a lot of people died, and there was a lot of unrest and bad things. Let's not hope this is going to turn out like that. But all the people who profit from the fiat system, I'm not so sure if they just say, let's give it to the Bitcoiners. It's okay. Here you have it. I'm not so sure.
Yeah, and sometimes I struggle a bit in the ecosystem when everyone goes, low time preference, we save for the future. But I've been working at Relay. Sometimes it's like, we save for the future, but why is this new feature we request for like 2 days not ready already? And you go like, well, these things take time, and you need to test it, and it also needs to be user-friendly, for example, for the vast majority of people. Just because you're a tech super nerd doesn't mean that your mom is able to actually use this app or this feature. And then sometimes we get lost a bit, but I'm there with you. I think the fiat standard is going to stick around longer than we expect. And if you compare it to '08, I mean, the crisis of '08 is like, for the audio listeners, I'm doing like a very small percentage now. It's like this big. And currently, I mean, we didn't have a huge crash crisis yet, arguably. We're about this size. So like whatever is happening next, if the same things apply, this one is going to be like 10, if not 20x more bad than what we've seen in '08, '09. So just looking at this and then having an option with Bitcoin, I think is going to be one of the main reasons a lot of normies look at this and go like, maybe it's not that. Maybe I should invest a bit of time into this and also understand why it's here, because it's not just internet money. If you read the white paper, and if you maybe have a bit of a background in libertarianism and such, you quickly realize, this is actually much more than just, paying your drug dealer online, which is a very stupid thing to do for people who listen. Don't pay your drug dealer with Bitcoin. It is not anonymous. And you slowly get into these thought principles that are pretty much interesting. But what I'm curious, Ronnie, is you categorize yourself also as a libertarian. You're also a journalist. I have a very similar viewpoint. And when I talk to my journalism friends, I think it's very safe to say that they have a very left-leaning, if not left extreme-leaning viewpoint. Do you think if you speak to other journals, is there ever a point in time where they will understand Bitcoin? Because for now, it's just if the number goes up, they want to report. If the number goes down, they want to report. And they never catch on. Is there anything in between there?
Yeah, most journals, like in online journalists, they just don't have the time. And if they're not personally interested, they will never have the time. They will keep writing about the price, because actually this is the only thing which really interests a broader audience. The people who really get into it, there are always a few. So, but yes, journalists are very left-leaning and very green everywhere in the world, everywhere in Europe. It is like that. All these studies prove it. I think today in Neue Zürcher Zeitung, NZZ, was a very interesting interview with Giovanni Di Lorenzo. He's the editor-in-chief of Die Zeit, the most important left-leaning German weekly newspaper. And he was also asked why are they all green? And he said, they all come from the university. Okay, that's the reason. Because the university is left, then the journalists are left, and everyone in the newspaper is left. I mean, I criticized this since 20 years. I used to be a media critic full time, and this was always one of my main critic points, that there is not a fair representation of the people in the media. I think it now changes, like with podcasts like this, and with a lot of other people who use the democratization of the internet. But if you just look at the newspaper and at the normal journals, it's very left leaning, and it starts even to get worse. I mean, the people who stay are even more left leaning. It has also to do with the income. I mean, if you really want to have a good salary, better don't go in journalism. I mean, these are people who are okay with being poor. I mean, why should they embrace Bitcoin?
That kind of leads into my question, really, is because are journalists mainly just sort of parroting the current tone or sentiment to Bitcoin in order to get their payday, rather than actually critically thinking about it, studying it, understanding it, and reporting on that fact? Because obviously that takes time. And if they just do a quick sort of search about what the current sentiment is, they can just echo that because they can see that that's a trending topic. And that's not really journalism, that's just carrying forward a sentiment at the time. And I'm just wondering whether there is any sort of reality to that kind of hypothesis in my head. Do you think?
I've seen journalists who really got into it and got the experts, and then sometimes they quit their jobs and now they're not working anymore for the newspaper. So this is like the normal route of Bitcoin journalists. Maybe I also quit my job one day, but I have to say I'm pretty happy with what I do. So I like working, so I don't really see why I have to quit my job, because you have to do something, and just sitting on a beach your lifelong might also not be that interesting.
You showed us a copy of your magazine earlier. Do you want to show
Oh
it
yeah,
to
yeah.
us again? And let's
I'll
let's
show it
talk
to
about
you.
that.
This is the quarterly. You can order it one for free on schweizermonat.ch, but it might be better if you speak German because it's in German. Yeah, so we are like over 100 years old. We got founded in 1921 by a group
Oh
of
wow.
conservatives who wanted to fight against the then League of Nations, which turned into the United Nations. And yeah, there's a lot of history of 100 years, some bad things, some good things. But now we are here and still existing. And I think we have a lot of really valuable authors that were right for us until now. So I think if you want some depth, something you want to know more than what you get in the media, you should give us a chance, because now this issue is on tolerance. The next issue is gonna be on climate change, and in the autumn it's gonna be on financial systems. And we will invite Saifeddin Ammous to Zug. So anyone who wants to see Saifeddin Ammous in Switzerland, he better join us. Get member for 180 Swiss francs in our membership, and he will be able to see Saifeddin Ammous in Zug.
That's really, really
So we're
cool.
also looking for more authors, also for this financial systems thing. So if anyone wants to write there or whatever, it's best to reach out to me, and we will see if there might be a possibility or not.
That's brilliant. And for 100 years in publication, that's testament to the appetite for reading such material, right? And here you are, talking about Bitcoin in that context. So that's really great. It just shows you that, if you continue to talk in what you believe in, it can bring you to new and weird and wonderful places like the Bitcoin rabbit hole here at Rabbit Hole Stories.
Yeah, I thought it really suits to the values of this magazine. That's why I brought in Bitcoin. We made the first dossier in 2018, a second one in 2020, and we still keep this debate about Bitcoin fiat system up. And yeah, because I think it's important that at least one magazine speaks about it in an informed way. Because as you said, like all the other journals, that they just talk about price or now it's dead. And I mean, yeah, what you really want some real information, no? I mean, this is also the bad thing about social media. There are a lot of people who are always and only on social media, and they know nothing about nothing. So it's really important that you sometimes get some valuable information, that you really look a YouTube documentary full for an hour, or you really read a full book, or you read a issue of Schweizer Monat. I think this brain food is really important, because this is what we are in the end.
I'm curious. I know that Schweizer Monat has like a core team, probably with you and a few coworkers, and you also have contributors. How do your coworkers persuade Bitcoin? Do they get it? Have they realized it, or is it like, oh, this is Ronnie's weird thing, and we'll let it be?
Actually, it's more that one. That's Ronnie, this Bitcoiner. Yeah, we don't trust so much. Actually, I once told everyone I'm giving away 10,000 sets for free, and of the team, just one person wanted it. So I gave it to this, and yeah, all the others were not interested. So yeah, their fault. But we had former employees which are strong Bitcoiners, and yeah, I think a lot of our authors are Bitcoiners. So I think also all around me, I often go to Bitcoin meetups. I'm also the moderator of several Bitcoin conferences. We're gonna have Bitcoin Alps in Thun in September, Bitcoin Baden in December. So I'm already booked there as moderator.
Nice, nice. And you did a fantastic job in Kreuzlingen at the Swiss conference as well. So people got to see you there. I'm curious. You also mentioned before hitting record that you guys obviously also have interviews up, and we'll make sure to link the YouTube channels, everything in the show notes below. And you have interviewed some quite exclusive people, I would say, who also had interesting stories and such. Do you still, if you interview these kind of people, do you get nervous? Do you want to maybe slide a specific answer in there? Maybe if it's like an old TradFi guy who spent decades in banking, do you want to go like, have you bought Bitcoin, or something like this? Is there something in you, if you do interviews, where you go, I have to ask these questions, or do I even get nervous, or any other sentiments?
Yeah, I always get nervous. I get nervous in June when we have Björn Lomborg there. I'm going to have to speak on stage with him about climate change, which is a difficult topic, and I'm not that good in English. And also with Saifedean Ammous in Zug, we're going to have to speak English on stage. So yeah, I'm always a bit nervous. And for example, I asked Steven Pinker in English 1 hour, and Neil Ferguson in English 1 hour. So this is like on the border of my capacities. But yeah, you have to push yourself. You think you might do it well, and I hope it turned out pretty okay.
One thing that I'm sort of wondering whether I should venture down this rabbit hole or not, but something was stuck in my mind earlier about you guys saying about the city is very different from the countryside in Switzerland. And my mind went off on a whole different tangent about, you get a lot of people talking about things like, we should sort of go back to having these homesteads, and, we should sort of have these sorts of lifestyles. But if I'm in a city, in like an urban landscape, how am I meant to sort of like homestead in this environment? And I think some people get sort of trapped or blinkered in their own sort of environment, and they can't see beyond it and the realities that they're proposing that we should do out there within the ecosystem. Does that make sense? And wondering whether or not we need to really factor in the broader scope of our environment, and how we can sort of like educate and talk about Bitcoin in different ways, so it doesn't ostracize and isolate people.
Yeah, I think every one of us has to leave their bubble and try also to communicate to the people where they are. A lot of Bitcoiners, they always talk about Bitcoin, but maybe there are also other possibilities to get people into Bitcoin. For example, there was in Kreuzlingen, Joel, I don't know if you've seen that, also this conversation about energy, and there was this one guy who buys this, who manufactures these heating systems, and he told us he to the customer, he always just talks about the manufacturing system and about this values and what he does. And then in the end, when he already bought it, he says, and the good thing is you can also mine Bitcoin with it and earn money. So yeah, and then you have the interest of the people because they have a house and they're looking for new heating. That's their actual problem. And yeah, you don't get this person with Bitcoin, but if you build him a Bitcoin heater, Bitcoin miner heater, then he's a Bitcoiner without that he even knows it. So I think we have to go on the level, or I mean, it's like entrepreneurship. What does an entrepreneur? He looks what is the problem of his client, and he tries to solve this problem. And if someone comes to you and says, "Come to my church," you say, "No, why? I'm perfectly happy." So I think we should everyone should go out of their bubble, and this is also what we try at Schweizer Monat, that we also speak with people from the left wing. We try to hear different opinions because the truth always comes out in the dialogue, in the debate. So I don't think we are always right, or you should just listen to us or so. This is also boring. I mean, you also get to new ideas if you challenge your views and let them be challenged. So I think Bitcoiners should attract more people with different topics and take them where they are.
In that same vein, for you, what is the difference in Switzerland between the countryside and the city? Are there like fundamental differences, and what
Yes.
are those?
So for me, I used to live 9 years in Berlin, and then I went back to Zurich. I lived there for 3 years, and then came COVID. And I really, at this time, I went out to the countryside because it really was annoying to me, all these people with the COVID regulations, and they are not really freedom loving. They say, "Oh, you should follow the rule. You don't have the mask on," and so on. And in my experience, the people in the countryside were much more relaxed. They say, "Okay, someone in the store does not have a mask. Why do I care? Is it my problem? No." So this is what I see. I found more freedom recently in the countryside, and yeah, the people in the cities. So many of them are socialists or green, and they're the same. They also want socialism in another way. So yeah, I'm not feeling so happy with them. I'm more on the side of the entrepreneurs and the people who are doing something valuable for society. And it's not that they don't do anything valuable, but also our magazine is supported by entrepreneurs and people like this group of people who really want to have something else in media, because as we said before, 95% of all media is very left-leaning and green, which is annoying when you never see your opinion or your view of the things in the media. This is getting very annoying, and we give them another view.
Would you say, I can't remember who said it on social media once, but someone posted basically everyone who holds Bitcoin and understands the value proposition of Bitcoin inevitably is an entrepreneur. Would you share that statement, or do you think there's still some differences?
No, no, that's too much. I mean, at least you prove that you can look for a good and keep it, and you don't lose it. But this is like a very low level of entrepreneurship.
That's someone looking to tap themselves on the back for being so smart to buy Bitcoin.
Yeah, which is an annoying part of the community, to be fair, because what you mentioned previously, Ronnie, it's good that we go out of our own bubbles sometimes and we look for, I mean, don't look for problems or anything unless you want to, but realize that there are other things out there, and that you, as you have said, have to have these debates and somewhere meet in the middle. And sometimes the Bitcoin ecosystem is quite blunt in this way. They go, "Oh, we're so smart and we've got everything figured out." When in reality, we don't know where it's going. Is it going to die? Probably not, but who knows? Maybe it's not hyper-Bitcoinization. Maybe it would just be a alternative asset forever. And the people who are smart enough to realize this get rewarded. And those who don't, well, they get left behind.
Yeah, so I'm really very curious and I'm really fascinated by Bitcoin and I really talk a lot about Bitcoin, but there are so many other topics actually. And I'm really happy I'm not one of these YouTubers which only speak about Bitcoin because it can be get annoying after a while. There are so many other interesting topics which also should be followed and yeah, I mean, you have to look at it, and there, I think everything can amazing if you get deeper into it. And Bitcoin is one of these things, definitely, where you can never stop. Also, my girlfriend always says, "How can you still talk about Bitcoin? How can you still listen to podcasts about Bitcoin? Didn't you already understand everything?" And kind of yes, but still something is still curious to watch it. So I have both in me. I like talking and listening about Bitcoin, but there is so much more in life.
Mhm.
Yeah, totally. Go out and touch grass and speak to somebody else about anything else other than Bitcoin now and again.
Yeah, sure.
Ronnie, mate, it's been fascinating having a chat with you here at Rabbit Hole Stories, and we're gonna work towards the close of this show now. And thank you for the exploration of your Bitcoin rabbit hole. But before we close, we do the All Roads Lead Back to Bitcoin challenge for all of our guests, and we're trying to prove that in fact all roads lead back to Bitcoin. So I'm going to give you a word or phrase, and somehow you're going to have to relate that back to Bitcoin, if that's all right. And owing to the fact that you two were gloating the fact that you guys are always punctual over there in Switzerland, and maybe not so much over here in the UK because I was a couple of minutes late, we thought the appropriate word would be punctual. How does punctuality, being punctual, sorry, lead back to Bitcoin?
So you can look at the blocks. Sometimes they take half an hour, sometimes they take 2 minutes. So punctual is usually 10 minutes, but how's that?
I just made it too easy for you, really. But it's a perfect answer, of course. Bitcoin is the most punctual thing, right? On average.
In the end, the block comes. What was the longest one block did not come? Like over 2 hours?
Oh,
I mean, historically speaking, block number one after the Genesis block was 6 days, but you know, this was in the beginning.
Yeah.
I think last year was 2.5 hours or something. Could be, yeah. But then we still catch up. Yeah, we have the 10 minutes on average.
And is this by accident or why is this? Does just no one find something for 2.5 hours?
If I remember correctly, I think it was right after difficulty adjustment, which increased, and for some reason it just took longer for them to find the right
Okay.
hash. So maybe something along these lines. Maybe the Chinese did something wrong. You know, I always say in mining, just blame it on the Chinese. It will come out good.
if any
Or
of
maybe
you
something else.
listening knows the answer, put it in the comments.
Yeah, exactly. Ronnie, it was fascinating having you on. If people want to get in touch, where can they find you? And if you have anything to share, please do so now.
Yeah, I would be happy if also people subscribe to our podcast. You can find us on YouTube, on Spotify, on wherever. And yeah, go to schweizermonat.ch and get a member of Schweizer Monat. And you can, every month in Switzerland, we do an event and you get free entry and also food and drinks. And the program, of course, we'll always have interesting guests, interesting debates. You see them on schweizermonat.ch/events. And yeah, I would be happy if we get more members because with more members, it's more fun and more interesting discussions. And yeah, let's do it. Or let's
Nice.
meet up somewhere at the Bitcoin conference. I'm often there in Switzerland.
Nice. And also, as I said previously, thanks for your finite time to come onto the show and to talk with us here this evening. And also to our listeners, thanks for your finite time. And as always, stay curious.